Okay, what's going on, guys? It's a live pregame show, week 13. Today is November 28th. We are into what would have been the final week of the college football regular season if we actually had a normal season, but here we are. This is probably going to be one of your bigger weeks of the season. Obviously, we had a lot of games yesterday that already happened. We'll be going over all of those, as well as all the games coming up today in the FBS. Yes, stay tuned for that. It's going to be a good one here today. We're going to be live for about a half hour or so it's going to be a good show here today. What's up, Indy? You ask, how about the Irish? That was quite a game yesterday between Notre Dame and North Carolina. Yeah, that was insane. It looked like North Carolina was going to pull an upset there, and that would have been insane if it did happen. Honestly, it looked like for a little while there that we could have seen the Tar Heels get the win there because, it looked possible. The Tar Heels, they were playing very well in that one. That was kind of a scary one for Notre Dame, but in the end, good for them. They were able to get the win, so that was going to be big. That's going to be a big win for them, especially considering North Carolina was ranked 19th. So that's going to be a resume-building win there for Notre Dame moving forward. Obviously, they're definitely in the talk of the college football playoff right now. All they got to do really now is just win out. They've got Syracuse on the 5th, and they've got Wake Forest after that, and then of course you got the ACC championship game, which definitely is going to be your biggest. That's going to be the biggest game of the season, I'd say, for Notre Dame. If you look at how they played against Clemson, that obviously was a huge game for them. But now they're probably going to have to play Clemson again in the ACC championships. We're going to be able to see whether or not Notre Dame can beat Clemson, which Clemson will have Trevor Lawrence back for that matchup. It's more than likely that they will, unless he gets injured. So got to consider that too. For Notre Dame, it's going to be a much tougher matchup this time around in comparison to how it was just about a month ago. So yeah, it's going to be tough. What's up, Lions? How's it going? As far as the rest of the games going on here today, we got a good noon slot coming up today. Looking at some of them here today, we've got, of course, Ohio State and Illinois. That was scheduled, I think, for noon Eastern, but that game actually got canceled because of positives on the Ohio State side, so we will not be having the Buckeyes playing here today. We do have Tulsa and Houston. That got postponed. Minnesota, Wisconsin got postponed. Or no, that got canceled. And then Memphis Navy got postponed as well. So we do have a slight list of games that got postponed here today, which obviously you're going to have that every week. But really, this week hasn't been terrible. We do see Cincinnati, of course, having their game against Temple canceled, so we won't be seeing Cincinnati this week, which we need to see Cincinnati play every game if they're going to be a college football playoff team, in my opinion. Cincinnati, great team. They're playing very well right now, but the thing is that they're a group of 5 conference team, so we don't really know whether or not they're a college football playoff contender unless they play all their games and just show up well. Because all season long they've blown out all of their opponents except for UCF and Army at the beginning of the season. So once again, we just got to see Cincinnati as much as we can right now just to see whether or not this is a true college football playoff team, because I believe they are. I think that they definitely got the talent of a team like that. They just need to continue playing games and continue having a good season. As far as some games going on, though, let's look at some of those. And just so you guys know, at the beginning parts of this, usually I just go through all the games, giving you guys a quick overview on that. And then we're going to be going over my predictions for every single game in just a little bit. So yeah, stay tuned for that. But yeah, coming up at 11 Central, noon Eastern, we got Kentucky and Florida. Big game there. Florida's ranked 6th in the nation. They're just on the verge of making it into the college football playoff. And right now they're 6-1. They're actually favored by 24 here against the Wildcats today, which isn't much of a surprise, obviously, considering Florida right now is easily the much better team. I also got Texas Tech and Oklahoma State. That game's coming up at noon. We got Oklahoma State, of course, favored by 11.5, and they're ranked 23rd. Obviously, Oklahoma State's off to kind of a weird last couple of weeks. They had a close game against Kansas State. They lost to Texas on October 31st, and they also lost to Oklahoma 13-41 last week. So Oklahoma State, over the past 3 weeks, really has not been as good as they definitely should be if they're wanting to be a college football playoff team. So, yeah, a few concerns going on right now for Oklahoma State, but they're definitely still a great team. I think they've got potential moving forward to still be a potential contender for the playoff. But as far as it goes for some other games, let's look at that. All right, we got, NC State and Syracuse. That's coming up at noon. Should be a decent one there. Obviously, NC State's having a pretty good season at 6-3. Penn State and Michigan. This is an interesting matchup here between Penn State and Michigan, because on one side you got a Penn State team who's still winless. They're 0-5 right now, And it is stunning to me how bad Penn State has been this season. Like, that's probably the biggest bust ever for my predictions. Like, you got Penn State. I predicted them, I think, what did I say? I think I said 10-2. I said 10-2 for Penn State this season. And of course, that was before the normal season got kind of shoved into the or got tossed out. And they're 0-5 right now. That's insane to me. But then you got Michigan, of course, who's also struggling. They're 2-3 right now, and they're trying to make it to 3-3, which I think Michigan today has got a good chance of doing that. I mean, Michigan definitely is a team that I think is a little bit better than Penn State right now. I mean, if you look at how they've been playing, I mean, they've been playing pretty terrible too. They got blown out to Wisconsin, blown out to Indiana. They beat Rutgers in 3 overtime last week. But Penn State's got 2 wins. Michigan's got 3 wins, or 2 wins, and then Penn State's got nothing. So that's kind of the difference there. We also got Maryland and Indiana. Indiana's playing again this week. That's going to be an interesting one. Maryland's 2-1 right now. Indiana's 4-1. So, winner of that game certainly is going to be looking like a pretty good team in the Big Ten East. That's for sure. I mean, Maryland right now is actually towards the top with a 2-1 record. So we'll have to see what happens there. Let's see. Yeah, just let me know your guys' questions in the live chat here. I'll try to answer as many of your guys' questions as I can. But let's see. Are they starting Joe Milton or are they going with the other guy? I'm not quite sure on that one. I haven't looked completely into that game a whole lot, but I'm assuming, I mean, Joe Milton's been their primary quarterback all season, so I'd assume that they're gonna start him. But yeah, don't take it from me. I'm pretty sure Joe Milton should be the starter there. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you look at the stats for Michigan this season, it's just been a rough one for this team in general. Lots and lots of disappointments. I mean, if you look at Joe Milton last week for Michigan, of course, he's only 5 for 12. And then you got, of course, you got Cade McNamara coming in, which he had a much better game than Milton did. So I mean, it's kind of tough to say, but I'd probably put in Cade if I was Michigan here. I mean, he had 27 for 36, 260 yards, 4 touchdowns. So he had a pretty good day for Michigan. I think it's definitely, or it should be him being the starter. I mean, at this point, if you're Michigan, you got nothing to lose. So Milton, he's just had a rough go at it so far. So, I mean, once again, I'd go with Cade here in this situation, but I mean, that's not up to me. That's up to the coaches. But I mean, it's just been kind of a rough season for Michigan. And honestly, why not start him just to kind of see how he does? Because I mean, honestly, this season's already just a trash can for Michigan right now, because this has been a big disappointment for them. So, yeah, why not try something new? That's what I would do if I was Michigan, but who knows? We'll have to see what happens there. Maryland and Indiana is coming up. We also got Vanderbilt and Missouri. Kind of an interesting storyline there. Of course, Vanderbilt's got the first. It looks like we're going to see the first women football player in college football. Kind of interesting. Well, actually, no, it's not college football. It's in the Power 5, so something interesting. She's going to be their place kicker this week for Vanderbilt. Should be it's good for college football. That's what I will say. Auburn and Alabama is coming up at 3:30 Eastern. We got Alabama, of course, who's favored by 24.5, and they're 7-0, easily looking like the best team in the nation right now. That is going to be the game of the day there in the Iron Bowl at 3:30 Eastern. I mean, Auburn's ranked 22nd. It's always a great matchup between Auburn and Alabama. That's going to be something to definitely look forward to as we get into Week 13, because I mean, honestly, Alabama is probably the clear-cut winner of the SEC West right now, but Auburn, I don't know. I mean, even though Auburn's got a couple of losses, this could still be a huge win for Auburn's program right now. I mean, this is a big game for Auburn moving forward. We also got Pitt and Clemson coming up at 3:30. Clemson's favored by 24, and they're also 7-1, and they're trying to build back some momentum as they head into the rest of the season and possibly postseason as well. And then we got Northwestern and Michigan State also coming up. Big matchup in the Big Ten there. You got Northwestern, who's 8th in the nation. The college football playoff rankings put Northwestern way up there. I mean, if you look at them last week, before they beat Wisconsin, I think, that puts Northwestern like jumping 10 standings there. That's insane for Northwestern. I mean, they were like 23rd, I think, before that game against Wisconsin, and then after that Wisconsin win. But don't get me wrong, they looked great in that Wisconsin win. Like, they only held Wisconsin to 7 points there, which is extremely impressive out of a team like Northwestern right now. Also coming up, we got Louisville and Boston College. ACC matchup there. Boston College, of course, right now is 5-4. So they're definitely looking like a decent team right now. I mean, this has not been a bad season for Boston College by any means. That's what I will say. And then Mississippi State and Ole Miss, of course, are And it looks like they're playing as well. And then we got Rutgers and Purdue coming up at 4 Eastern. Purdue's 2-2. Rutgers is 1-4. And Rutgers, of course, gave Michigan a battle last week. It looked like they were possibly going to get the win. So no doubt that that could be a close game there. And then we also got, it looks like San Jose State, Boise State. That could be an interesting one too as well. San Jose State's 4-0 right now. And they're kind of one of the first ones out of the rankings right now. And then you got Boise State on the flip side, who's 4-1. Only loss is a blowout loss to BYU. Looking at the rest of the slate here, we also got Duke and Georgia Tech coming up at 7 Eastern. That should be a good one. Kansas State Baylor's coming up at 7 as well. LSU Texas A&M, that's going to be a fun one at 7. Texas A&M is ranked 5th in the nation. Then LSU, of course, is 3-3. And yeah, A&M right now is the first one out of the college football playoffs. So they're really on the outside there right now. And I think Texas A&M is definitely capable of being a playoff team. It's just a matter of whether or not they can win these big games. Because yeah, this is going to be a big one for Texas A&M, especially LSU. I mean, I don't think LSU is going to give Texas A&M the win here. I don't think it's going to be an easy win for the Aggies by any means, but watch out for that one. We also got Georgia and South Carolina coming up 7:30 Eastern there. And then we got, of course, Georgia being ranked 9th in the nation right now. They're 5-2, favored by 22 in that matchup as well. So the Bulldogs are your favorite there pretty easily. We also got Utah and Washington coming up at 7:30, probably your game of the week in the Pac-12. Utah is 0-1 right now. Of course, they lost to USC last week. Tough loss there for Utah, but this could be a big win to turn around them because Washington right now is looking like a pretty good team as well. Of course, they're 2-0, but yeah, we'll have to see what happens there. But yeah, looking at some games, of course, yesterday, I mean, we also got a couple more coming up in the Power 5, but yesterday there were a lot of good games that went on. We saw Iowa State and Texas, of course, playing each other, probably your game of the week in the Big 12. Of course, Iowa State was ranked 13th, Texas was number 17. Iowa State won 23-20. They stopped a last-second drive from Texas in order to win that game. That was a crazy win there for Iowa State. I mean, it was a very close one too. And considering Iowa State is 7-2 right now, like that was a big win for the Cyclones. I mean, they're at the top right now of the Big 12, believe it or not. Yeah, this Iowa State team, who would have known that they would be probably your top seed in the Big 12 heading into the later parts of this season. We also saw Nebraska and Iowa play. Iowa's ranked 24th. They are 4-2 now after their win over Nebraska, which this has been a brutal season for the Huskers. They're 1-4. They lost the game by 6, and honestly, it looked like Nebraska possibly was going to pull the win there off of a last-second drive. We saw a lot of games kind of go in that trend yesterday with the last-second drive, and Nebraska was going down the field. It looks like they were probably going to have a game-winning drive there, but then I think their quarterback, Adrian Martinez, fumbled the ball, ended up giving Iowa the win there, 26-20. Huge win for the Hawkeyes. They've won 4 in a row. We also had UCF and South Florida. That was a shootout. UCF won 58-46. Notre Dame and North Carolina played each other. Notre Dame, of course, second in the nation. North Carolina was 19th. Notre Dame got the win, 31-17, but that was a very close one for the majority of that game. It looked like we were possibly going to see a big win there out of North Carolina, but in the end, it didn't happen. But it was close, no doubt about that. Great performance by North Carolina. We also got Wyoming and UNLV. Wyoming had a blowout win. Stanford and Cal also played in the afternoon hours. Stanford won that one 24-23. I think Cal, that was also a last-second drive game. We saw Cal almost get the win, but Stanford won by 1 there. That was a big win. And California has just been a huge disappointment this season. Like, if you watch my predictions on California this offseason, I definitely thought Cal was going to be a big contender in the Pac-12 North, possibly give Oregon a run for the championship game. But in the end, it's just been a terrible season so far for the Golden Bears. I mean, I think Cal definitely, I mean, if you look at how Cal and all the talent that they got, like Chase Garbers last season, when he was their starting quarterback last season for Cal, he was undefeated, I think, as a starter. So that was kind of a crazy situation there to see Cal take another loss and go to 0-3. So it's just been a rough season so far for Cal. Then we saw Oregon and Oregon State. This was quite a game if you watched it last night. Oregon, of course, was leading, I think, for the majority of the game, but Oregon State was kind of sneaky. They were just hanging on there and just waiting for Oregon to mess up, and eventually it did happen. I mean, I'm going to look through this real quick and see. I don't think Oregon State ever led until the end of the game. Let's see here. Actually, no, they did lead in the beginning of the fourth quarter. They led 33-31, and that's kind of when it went back and forth between both of these teams, and that just kind of gave it to Oregon State in the end. So, Yeah, that was quite a matchup there between both of those teams for sure. I mean, Oregon. If you look at this Oregon team right now, like they're 3-1. That was a huge upset. They're probably never gonna have a chance to make it to the playoff anymore. Which I mean, even if they did win that matchup, I think their chances of making it to the playoff would be extremely low. Mainly because of course Oregon like only having a short season as they are, and having a close game to Oregon State. I just don't think that would guarantee them a good shot at the college football playoff. But I definitely think Oregon is still a good team. And I think they probably should be still in the rankings next week, but they definitely will be much, much lower than they were this week. We also saw Washington State canceled. That was for this week, and that got moved. And it looks like Washington was rescheduled to play Utah, which once again is scheduled to be tonight, 7:30 Eastern. So that should be a good matchup. But yeah, yesterday is a fun day of college football. I mean, I definitely think. I mean, if you watched some of the games yesterday, it almost felt like Saturday yesterday. That's kind of something that I did notice because we saw lots of really good games, and it's kind of funny because today we got a whole bunch of more great games, including Auburn and Alabama coming up this afternoon. That's going to be a fun one there. Lions fan, thoughts on Sarah Fuller being the starting kicker for Vanderbilt today? That was kind of interesting. I saw that yesterday. That's good for them. Certainly good for Vanderbilt. I mean, I certainly think it's just a crazy situation in Vanderbilt right now, being 0-7, but it's definitely awesome to see history being in the making here this week. Pretty awesome to see that. Yeah, wish her the best. Hopefully, she has a good game here today as Vanderbilt goes on. To play Missouri, which obviously I think Vanderbilt, this could be their first win here today. Who knows? They might have the motivation to go out and have a big game, which I think Missouri being a 3-3 team, like it's just been kind of a messy season for them. Who knows? This could be a big one for Vanderbilt today. That's also coming up at noon Eastern, that game. But yeah, good for Sarah Fuller, good for Vanderbilt. Looking at some other games here today. In the top 25, we've got Coastal Carolina and Texas State going on at 3 Eastern. That's your main group of 5 game in the top 25 here today, it looks like. I don't think we have any other ones. Well, actually, Tulsa and Houston was supposed to play, but that game got postponed, so we will not see that one here this week, but that will likely be coming in the future. But as far as some other games go, let's look at some more group of 5 ones. We got, SMU and East Carolina. That's coming up in the noon hour. And it looks like, Troy Appalachian State. That should be a good one. Troy's actually 4-4. Appalachian State is 6-2. So it's been a good season for Appalachian State so far. And they are favored by 14. Once again, if you guys have any questions, any betting picks, anything like that, just let me know in the live chat. And I'll try to get back to as many of you guys' responses as possible as we are in a live stream here. This is certainly been a great week. We got a lot of action also coming up today. I'd probably say our game of the week is definitely going to be Auburn and Alabama, though. That's going to be quite a game there in the Iron Bowl this afternoon. But yeah, that being said, we're about 20 minutes in, so I'm going to get into some picks for today. I appreciate you guys all hanging around. It's been a good one here today, and once again, lots of great games also coming up in just a little bit. But I'm going to go over pretty much all the games in the FBS here today. And for some of them, I'll give you guys kind of a quick little analysis. And then for the rest of them, I'll just give you guys a quick pick. As for the group of 5 games, I probably won't be going over a full analysis on those. But starting out with the noon games, at noon we got Kentucky and Florida coming up. Florida's ranked 6th in the nation. They're 6-1, favored by 24 there. I'm going to go with Florida pretty easily. I think the Gators definitely are the better team there, and they deserve a big win. I think we also got Texas Tech and Oklahoma State coming up at noon. Oklahoma State's favored there by 11. And I'm going to go with Oklahoma State as well there. I think the Cowboys are all around the better team. They've been playing a lot better as well. Even though Oklahoma State, they've been kind of a slide there. They've been on a slide as they've lost 2 of their last 3 games, and they're trying to come back from that. We also got NC State and Syracuse coming up. I'm going to go with NC State there. Syracuse, this has just been a bad season for Syracuse so far. They're 1-8. Only win is to Georgia Tech, so I got to go with NC State there to get an easy win. Penn State, Michigan coming up at noon Eastern. Michigan is at home there. They're favored by 1, and it looks like that's going to be a pretty big matchup in the Big Ten East. I mean, it's got some big long-term implications. Obviously, you got Michigan on one side, who's definitely got Jim Harbaugh on the hot seat right now. I think Michigan definitely is going to be thinking about possibly making a coaching change after this season, as Michigan right now is 2-3, almost lost to Rutgers last week. So, yeah, of course, Michigan and Penn State, that should be a pretty interesting matchup. I'm going to go with Michigan in the end. I think Penn State, I mean, they're just too much on a slide right now, and their desperation is probably getting pretty high at this point. We also got, it looks like Maryland and Indiana coming up at noon. I'm going to go with Indiana there. I think the Hoosiers are all around the better team. Michael Penix, their quarterback, has been playing a lot better. And he's definitely, I think, a huge sleeper quarterback. Not many people are talking about Michael Penix, but he really is a great quarterback. There's no doubt about that. So watch out for him and watch out for Indiana moving forward. This is still a really good team. Vanderbilt, Missouri coming up at noon. Should be a good one there. I'm going to go with Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt gets their first win here today against Missouri. They're going to go on to 1-7, and we're going to see the Vanderbilt team get a huge win here today. Auburn and Alabama is coming up at 3:30 Eastern. Big game coming up today. I got to go with Alabama pretty easily. I mean, they're favored. If you want to see how big Alabama is right now, they're favored by 24.5 against an Auburn team that's pretty good. So that's going to be a big game for the Crimson Tide, currently being favored by 24. But I got the Crimson Tide once again. They're all around the better team. Mac Jones is a much better quarterback. I got to go with them. Pittsburgh and Clemson coming up at 3:30. I'm going with Clemson pretty easily there. Northwestern and Michigan State also coming up at 3:30. Looks like Northwestern's favored there by 13.5. I'm going to go with Northwestern there. I think the Wildcats are easily the better team. I'm not sure if they're a top 10 team quite yet. I was really, really surprised when we saw Northwestern get ranked into the top 10 this week. But yeah, I'm definitely going with Northwestern there, even though they probably shouldn't be a top 10 team quite yet. Like if I was ranking all the teams once again, I think this week in my rankings I'd rank them as, what did I put them as? I think I put them as number 12, I think, something like that. I don't think Northwestern should be top 10 quite yet, but they're definitely a good team, I think. We also got Louisville, Boston College. I'm going to go with Boston College there. Rutgers and Purdue. I'll go with Purdue. San Jose State, Boise State. That's going to be a close one. I'm going to go with Boise State as well there. Tater Tot says, I'm not happy about Ohio State not playing again. I don't blame you, man. I think Ohio State definitely, even though they had a lot of positives today, it would have been fun to see them play an Illinois team that's been on a hot streak lately. Like, Illinois won 2 in a row. They're looking like a pretty decent team right now. They could have given Ohio State a decent fight, especially in the early parts of that game. But I think Ohio State, obviously the Buckeyes still would have won. I think I had them winning by at least 20. But it's kind of unfortunate we don't get to see Ohio State today because they're a fun team to watch. Like Justin Fields, that team in general is just a really good team this season. I definitely think they've got potential to win a championship, a national championship for that matter. So should be an interesting one there. What's up, Michael? Welcome in. Lions fan, welcome in. We also got San Diego State and Colorado coming up at 5 Eastern. That just got scheduled, I think, a couple of days ago. But I'm going to go with the Buffaloes. They're 2-0 right now. Looks like their game got canceled for this week, and it was rescheduled for them to play San Diego State. So at least they still got a game, but we'll have to see what happens there. Then we got Duke and Georgia Tech coming up, and it looks like Duke is favored there by 1. I'm going to go with Georgia Tech. I got Georgia Tech getting their third win here today against the Blue Devils. We also got Kansas State and Baylor coming up at 7. Baylor is favored there by 6, and it's kind of surprising there. Of course, Kansas State is 4-4. They've got 3 more wins than Baylor does, and Baylor is actually favored there. But obviously, Kansas State has had a rough last couple of weeks. They've lost 3 straight games. They lost to West Virginia on the 31st, lost to Oklahoma State, and lost to Iowa State. And of course, they got Baylor now, which Baylor is a 1-5 team. Baylor's really not been all that good, so that should be an interesting matchup there. But I'm gonna go with Kansas State. I think Kansas State breaks their loss streak there, and they finally get a win once again. Which, it's kind of crazy to think about. Kansas State was just a ranked team in like the top 20, and now they've slid to 4-4, which is crazy to think about. But Baylor, then again, it's been a bad season for Baylor. Like, they've been a big surprise for me too. Like, I thought Charlie Brewer and that team was going to go on to a good season. I thought Baylor was possibly going to be a contender in the Big 12, but it's been the exact opposite of that, to say the least. We also got LSU and Texas A&M coming up at 7 Eastern. Texas A&M is favored there by 15.5. And it looks like Texas A&M right now is easily the better team. They're ranked 5th in the nation. Definitely a college football playoff contender, and I definitely think the motivation is going to be on the Aggies side a lot more than for LSU right now. So that should still be a good matchup. There's no doubt about that. Like, it's definitely going to be close. I'm going to go with Texas A&M there. I think Texas A&M is all around the better team. They're favored by 15 there. Kellen Mond, I definitely trust in him a lot more than Miles Brennan right now. But Texas A&M, they've got a great defense, all around just a great team there. Only loss this season is to Alabama back on October 3rd, so that's really their only loss is to a really good Alabama team. So all around, it's been a good season for Texas A&M, no doubt about that. Georgia and South Carolina is coming up also at 7:30. I'm going to go with Georgia there. I think South Carolina, I mean, they're just not a very good team at all. South Carolina is just a mess this season. So I'm going to go with Georgia right there. Utah and Washington coming up. That is a rescheduled game, it looks like. Utah was scheduled to play a different team, and same thing with Washington, I think. But I'm going to go with Washington there. They're actually favored by 7, and they're 2-0 right now. They're definitely looking like the better team so far. I'll go with them. TCU, Kansas coming up at 8 Eastern. Pretty easy one there. I'm going to go with TCU. I mean, Kansas this season has been terrible. I mean, honestly, that's not much. That's kind of a trend for Kansas at this point. They're just always a terrible team. But, man, this season has just been especially rough for Kansas. I mean, they got blown out to Oklahoma 62-9, blown out to Iowa State, got destroyed by Kansas State, destroyed by West Virginia, destroyed by Coastal Carolina. Then again, they've had a really tough schedule. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Kansas has played 5 ranked teams so far this season out of their 7 games. So it has been a rough season for Kansas. But, yeah, I'm going to go with TCU there pretty easily. Kansas is just a bad team this season. Arizona, UCLA also coming up at 8 Eastern. I'm going to go with UCLA there. Bruins are actually looking like a pretty good team this season. I mean, if you look at them so far, they absolutely destroyed California back a couple of weeks ago. They barely lost to Colorado, and they barely lost to Oregon, which Oregon's a pretty good team, and Colorado's also looked pretty good so far this year. So UCLA is actually looking like a pretty good team this season. Should be an interesting one there between them and Arizona. As for some other games, we also got, looks like Kent State, Buffalo. I'll go with Buffalo there. Bowling Green, Ohio. I'll go with Ohio. Ball State and Toledo. I'll go with Toledo. UTEP and Rice. I'll take UTEP there. Miami, Ohio, Akron. Miami, Ohio, I'll go with them. South Alabama, Arkansas State. I'll go with Arkansas State. Louisiana and Louisiana Monroe. That should be an absolute blowout. I'm going to go with Louisiana. And then Coastal Carolina, Texas State. I'll take Coastal Carolina there pretty easily. North Texas, UTSA. I'll go with UTSA. Troy, Appalachian State. I'll go with Appalachian State. And then as your super late game, 11 p.m. Eastern, we got Nevada and Hawaii. I will go with Nevada there. I think Nevada is definitely a team that should be ranked next week if they get a win against Hawaii today, which they're all around a pretty good team. So, yeah, stay tuned for that one. Should be a good one there. But yeah, that being said, that wraps up my game picks for this week. It looks like we also have Utah and Arizona State, of course, scheduled for this week. That got canceled, so we will not see that one. But Utah did get rescheduled, so that's good for them. Of course, Arizona State's had to deal with positives, and it's not looking good for them. As it looks like, I think, according to what I'm hearing here, it looks like they've got a lot of positives on the team, and it's a messy situation. Like, they've had 3 straight games canceled. I don't think Arizona State's really going to have a season at this point, because after this week, I mean, you've only really got 2 or 3 more games. So, been a tough season for Arizona State, that's for sure. If you've got any more questions, though, let me know in the live chat. I'll get to you guys' questions before I get off here because we've gone through our game predictions and all of that. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun day, though, for sure. We got games kicking off in just about 30 minutes from now. So, yeah, looking forward to getting those games started. But, yeah, be sure to let me know your questions in the live chat here. Otherwise, I'll get off for the day and I'll let you guys all go. Yeah, Northwestern is undefeated at ranked 8. Yes, you're right. Northwestern, that was really surprising to me to see them ranked 8th in the nation at this point. Like, I definitely think Northwestern's a good team. But yeah, it was kind of surprising to me to see them ranked as number 8. I mean, Northwestern's really good. Don't get me wrong. They had a huge win over the Badgers last week. I mean, that was a very, very impressive win by Northwestern, only holding Wisconsin, which this Wisconsin team was allowing, I think, what was it, 47 points per game going into that Northwestern game, and they only scored 7 there. So that was a crazy loss there for Wisconsin. I mean, it was a crazy game there, and it was a great game by Northwestern. Don't get me wrong, but man, for them to jump up like 14 ranks all the way up to number 8, that was a little bit excessive, I would say. I think Northwestern this week should be ranked at least in the top 15, maybe number 12, but I don't think they should be top 10 quite yet. If they get a win today, Northwestern, I'll probably put them in the top 10 as well, but we'll have to see what happens. What do you think will happen to Ohio State if they finish at least 6-0? I mean, Ohio State already, I think, is the lock for the Big Ten championship. Like, really, there's nothing that I think can stop Ohio State at this point. Like, the Buckeyes are all around just a great team. Like, they definitely think, I definitely think that they're a top team in the nation. I definitely think they're a big college football playoff contender as well. Like, would not surprise me a single bit to see Ohio State win a championship this year. Like, Justin Fields, he's just such a great quarterback. He's always Super efficient, got a great completion rate, and he's all around playing extremely well right now. And I think in general, like yeah, Ohio State, they should definitely be a top team in the nation right now. But I think Ohio State, like they're kind of disrespected right now. Like for them to be ranked below Clemson right now, like Clemson's a one-loss team in the ACC, and I understand that they lost to Notre Dame, but man, for them to lose, for them to be number 4 right now was kind of a surprise to me. I mean, I've got Ohio State at number 3 this week, but I mean, this is a Ohio State team that's easily, I would say, one of the best teams in the nation right now. They've definitely been playing like it, that's for sure. I mean, from them, I mean, if you look at the rest of their games here, they got Michigan State and Michigan coming up as their next couple of games. So they got a couple of games against your Michigan teams, and I mean, both those games are extremely winnable. I mean, if you look at Ohio State at the end of the day, their strength of schedule is going to be pretty terrible at the end of the year. I mean, their only main game that we've seen or that we will see of them going up against a quality opponent will be that Indiana game when they played them as the 9th team in the nation. And I mean, that was a good win for Ohio State, but it wasn't great. I mean, that's going to be the main game that's going to represent Ohio State to the playoff committee once we get towards the end of the season. So that's kind of what you got to consider there. But I think Ohio State, they go 6-0. I mean, and if they go undefeated through the regular season, there's no doubt to me that they go on to the college football playoff. But then again, don't forget they're going to have a big game in the Big Ten championship against Northwestern. It looks like Northwestern is going to be your representative in the Big Ten West for the championship, which isn't much of a surprise considering how well they're playing right now. And it just depends on whether or not Northwestern flops or not. Like if this Northwestern team decides to lose a couple of games down the stretch, that's going to be a bad situation there for Northwestern. But I mean, I think Ohio State is definitely going to be. I mean, honestly, if I was Ohio State here, I'd definitely be hoping that Northwestern wins out so you can play a good Northwestern team, because I think Ohio State would win that game no matter what. So if you can beat a quality Northwestern team that looks like a top team in the nation, that will definitely put you in a good position for the college football playoff. And that's really all I'm going to say there. I think Ohio State is easily a big contender right now, and I definitely think they should be a playoff team. You think the committee will let them play in the playoffs? Yes, I do. I definitely do. I mean, even though they've had a couple of games canceled, let me see. Is that their first one? Yeah, Maryland. Well, actually, no, this is their second game canceled. Oh, my. This could be a bad situation for Ohio State now, because this is their second game that has been canceled. And let me remind you, the Big Ten rules state that if a team has 3 games canceled or postponed, that puts them out of eligibility for the Big Ten championship. I didn't think about that. That's interesting. That could be a bad situation for Ohio State. That puts them out of the Big Ten championship. Now that brings up a good question there. If Ohio State can't make it to the Big Ten championship and they go undefeated through the regular season, will they make it into the playoff? Oh man, that's close. The thing is about Ohio State is we've seen. I mean, if you look at them using the eye test and you just see the team playing their games, like Justin Fields is such a great quarterback. I don't know how you could leave him out of the college football playoff, even if you do go undefeated through the regular season without a Big Ten championship appearance. Like, I don't know how you leave him out. Like, I think Ohio State definitely, even though, like, man, that would be rough though. That'd be rough for Ohio State. I mean, if you look at the standings right now in the Big Ten East, because we've seen Wisconsin, it looks like Wisconsin is ineligible now since they've had 3 games canceled. So it looks like we won't see them playing the Big Ten championship. That's kind of why I expect it to be Northwestern at this point. But yeah, if you take Ohio State out of the picture, that means that Indiana will be in the pole position in the Big Ten East. We could see an Indiana versus Northwestern Big Ten championship get this season. That would be a crazy situation there. Indiana, of course, is a really good team. There's no doubt about that. But it would be a fun matchup between Northwestern and Indiana if they did play each other. Because the craziest thing is usually we don't see both those teams very good at football. Like for Indiana, they're more of a basketball school than a football school. And this season, they've definitely defied that. And then Northwestern, of course, being ranked in the top 10 already. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So we could see that matchup if Ohio State does end up having another game canceled, which, yeah, this is kind of a really crucial situation there for Ohio State, because they got to get these positives figured out before that Michigan State game next week, or else they're out. But yeah, it should be interesting to see how this season finishes out, especially for Ohio State right now, because that could be a bad situation for the Buckeyes. Let's see what else we got. What's your prediction for Auburn, Alabama? I got to go with Alabama there. I think Alabama is all around the better team. Like if you look at the Crimson Tide right now, I mean, they've been the most consistently good team in the nation by far. They got a lot of talent on that team. And then Mac Jones, I really trust in him a lot more than Bo Nix right now. Like, I think Bo Nix is a great quarterback. There's no doubt on that. But I just think Alabama right now and Mac Jones is just the better team. I'm going with Crimson Tide in that one pretty easily. I think it'll be a blowout. I'll go with Alabama by at least 20 there. What happens if Penn State goes winless? That is going to be bad for Penn State. Like, I don't think they're not going to get rid of James Franklin after a really good season that like they had in 2019 yet. But James Franklin, that does not give him a good look if they go winless. But I think Penn State, they will get a win at some point this season. Like, I'm almost positive that they will get a win at some point, because if you look at Penn State right now, this week they got Michigan, which I'm not sure if they'll beat Michigan. Like, I think Michigan probably should be a good team. But then Rutgers next week, you got to play them. So I think Rutgers and Penn State should make for a good game. But I think Penn State will get their first win there at least against Rutgers if it is not this week. So they definitely will get a win at some point, but I don't think that they're going to get two. Like, 2 wins at this point, I'd probably say is out of reach for Penn State. They're just not good enough. Let's see. Who will take Ohio State's spot if Ohio State doesn't make it into the college football playoff? That is a very good question, King Mike. I still think Ohio State, even if they do have enough games canceled for them not to make it into the playoff or into the Big Ten championship, I still think that Ohio State will make it to the playoff, especially if they're undefeated, because Ohio State is just so good of a team. And you've got Justin Fields, which obviously, once again, if you look at Ohio State using the eye test, you can easily see that Ohio State is a top team in the nation. They're so efficient. They're just such a good team. So, but even if Ohio State doesn't make it into the playoff, I'd probably say it's either going to be Texas A&M or Florida, or the runner-up in the SEC, which this could be a totally weird situation if Ohio State doesn't make it, because, I mean, if Alabama wins the SEC, that leaves either Florida, or I'm guessing Florida's going to win the SEC East. So that probably puts Florida just outside of your top four. So, because I'm guessing we're going to see Alabama and Florida right now in the SEC championship. So if Florida loses in a close game, Florida's probably going to be number 5 or 6. So I'd probably say Florida will get bumped into there in the top 4 if Ohio State does get knocked out due to missing 3 games. But we'll have to see what happens there. Obviously, it could be a totally different team at this point. Like, we are still several weeks away from December 19th, when I think is the official playoff selection. So I think it's actually December 20th, because the 19th is when we got our championship games. But I mean, yeah, still a lot can happen in 3 weeks. So yeah, don't completely take what I say here, but I definitely think if Ohio State gets knocked out right now, it'd either be Texas A&M or Florida, and that's also considering, I mean, Notre Dame and Clemson, we're probably going to be seeing both of those teams playing in the ACC championship. So you also got to consider the loser of Notre Dame and Clemson will likely get knocked out as well. So looking at this situation, I'm pretty sure Alabama is going to be a locked team. Like, even if Alabama does lose the SEC championship, they'll probably still be number 4. So Alabama, I'm going to keep them in no matter what. But Notre Dame, if they lose to Clemson, that probably puts Clemson at number 1, I'd assume. And then Ohio State, of course. If Ohio State gets knocked out, that leaves you with Texas A&M and Florida just on the outside looking in. And, I mean, BYU's also in there. I mean, Cincinnati's also in there too. You got to consider both those teams are still on the outside. So, I mean, it's just up to the committee there. That would be a rough situation for the committee, because you got an undefeated Cincinnati team if Cincinnati does go undefeated, and you'll likely have a 1-loss Texas A&M team and a 1-loss Florida team kind of on the outside there. So that would be really interesting to see what the committee would do there. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's too early on for me to predict a full top 4 if Ohio State does get knocked out, because once again, a lot of things can happen in 3 weeks. We've seen already a lot of things happen over the past few weeks. So I can't really give you a whole really good prediction on that quite yet, but that's really all I can say right now. Texas A&M or Florida for the 4th spot in the playoffs. I'd have to say Florida. I mean, well, actually, Texas A&M did beat Florida earlier on in the season, so I'd probably say Texas A&M there. Then again, that's also considering if both teams stay with 1 loss. Like if for example, Texas A&M takes another loss at some point for the rest of the season, and Florida remains a 1-loss team, and Texas A&M is a 2-loss team, I put Florida in over Texas A&M there. But if Texas A&M and Florida both win out, I'd probably say Texas A&M would be your team in the playoff, mainly because they beat Florida earlier on in the season. Justin asks, what do you think about the Big 12 situation? Sorry I didn't get to that question. It's been up there for quite a while, but what kind of Big 12 situation are you thinking about? Are you thinking about like if you're talking about the championship, I definitely think right now it's a crazy situation in the Big 12. I mean, if I were to predict today like who's going to be in the Big 12 championship, I'd probably say Iowa State and Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's going to rise up and get to the top of the Big 12. Like I think right now Oklahoma is easily the hottest team in the nation. Right now, like they've won 5 in a row after starting 1-2. I mean, this team started 1-2 and they looked like a terrible team at the start of the season, but now that they've won 5 in a row pretty decently. I mean, they absolutely blew out Oklahoma State last week. You also got to consider that. I'm going to take Iowa State and Oklahoma to make it to the Big 12 championship this season. Like, I think Oklahoma State at this point, I mean, they've lost 2 games. They got destroyed to Oklahoma last week. I think they're pretty much out at this point, but once again, a lot of things can happen in just a couple of weeks. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. But I'd probably say Iowa State and Oklahoma will be your 2 teams representing the Big 12 in the championship, which, I mean, you also got Texas and Oklahoma State kind of in the background there. And it would have been what would have been really interesting is if Texas beat Iowa State yesterday and Texas gets up into the top 2. But I'm going to go with Iowa State once again and Oklahoma because Iowa State, the fact is that they beat Texas yesterday. So I got the Cyclones and the Sooners in the Big 12 championship this season. I'd probably say that there's at least a 70% chance of that happening at this point because, I mean, once again, we've only got a couple more weeks remaining in the Big 12 before we're done and over with. What if Florida beats Bama or vice versa? That would be really a crazy situation there. If Florida does beat Alabama, I think Alabama. I mean, even if Alabama is still undefeated heading into the SEC championship, I think Alabama would still be in the playoff at least at number 4. But for Florida, that could bring Florida up into the top 4, or that could bring Florida up into the top 2. So that'd be a crazy situation there. I mean, that wraps up my show for today on College Game Day. Obviously, this has been 42 minutes long, so I think we're going to cut it off here. I appreciate you guys all hanging around. Thanks again for a good show. It's been a fun one here today. We got lots of good games coming up as well. So yeah, enjoy the football here today. Thanks again for hanging around. We'll be back next week. I'll see you guys all later.